Charting the Course, your guide to Southwest Florida living, real estate, and life on the water.
Hi, I'm Captain Mike, Waterways in Paradise, powered and anchored by Keller Williams Realty.
And Chris Judd with Naples Boat Mart.
Welcome to another edition of our podcast. I've done podcasts before with Chris, but I thought we'd bring you another one that we put together called Building Your Southwest Florida Waterfront Lifestyle. And I think there's just things that we're putting in here, Chris, that our buyers, first-time buyers, haven't really thought about, and even seasoned buyers, that have lived here in Florida with the boat in the house haven't, really gave a lot of thought to it either. But today we just want to remind you this is all about education. We want you to call us with your questions or email us with your questions, but we're here to help educate you and give you some things to think about. My team, Waterways in Paradise, we specialize in waterfront property. We love what we do. We interact a lot with the boating community. And of course, Chris and I have, like I said, we've done a number of podcasts together. Chris, how long have you been in the business?
1992 was my first entry to this industry, and shortly thereafter, I got into my first general manager position with a boat dealership, and 16 years actually with Naples Boat Mart. And the like yourself, I think you've been around and in the business long enough where you've connected with a great group of people. You've developed a database and a clientele that really kind of kept us going when maybe times were a little less productive than we would like. But I'm very thankful for that. So those of you that are watching, we appreciate it a lot.
And I got to just add this that, almost 20 years ago, I bought my first boat from you. And that's how our relationship's been together. We've grown together as friends and professionals for almost 20 years now. So
Yes, sir.
this is not our first time together. With that being said, today we just like to give a shout out to Louis Ferris of Hoot Loan Mortgage. He is sponsoring this podcast for us, which kind of leads us right into our first topic, which is cash versus financing. I don't really think sometimes when our buyers start looking, they really took that extra minute to talk with their financial advisor, about what's better for them to do, cash or financing, whether it's purchasing the house or the boat. And or they didn't talk to Lewis, the lender, because there's so many options of availability he has. Now I know what the answers are, or Lewis can give the answers on a home, but when it comes to cash versus financing with the boating world, what do you find in your industry?
A lot of dealers over the years have created an option that didn't exist, a decade or so ago, and that was dealerships with in-house finance departments. Um, In-house financing is been something that's been more for the automotive industry for a lot of years. So you go in and they're really going to press hard for financing because obviously, as we all know, there's a profitability in lending. We all know that. So dealers like us in Naples Boat Mart, we have the luxury of having an in-house department that orchestrates that entire process with our clients. We are paid accordingly, quick and short to the point, and we have the luxury of basically crediting our purchases with the amount that we earn in that process. So it's not just some one-sided street here for the dealer to make a bunch of money. There's truly an incentive to doing so. So when you have the opportunity to go and deal with a dealer that is set up like that, it's not a sales pitch. It's not a smoke and mirrors game. It's a legitimate opportunity for someone to take advantage of a credit or a discount for legitimate reasons. So in the marine world, there's definitely benefits to it.
Absolutely. And we find the same thing in the housing world. So once again, have that conversation with your lender, have that conversation with your financial advisor. And I think it's just something to take into consideration. Now, here's a topic that they don't always think about, maybe up front, especially the first time home buyer, or they haven't put enough thought into it. Um, you know, Topic ownership decisions, how you're going to how are you going to make that transition? For the buyer of that waterfront property, is this going to be a full-time residence where they're going to be able to take advantage of the homestead, opportunities and the portability if they're reselling? Or, you have something in your world called, documentation. You
Yes.
want to explain the difference in your world between documenting a boat and just, going with the standard?
To relate it to, say, the automotive industry, when you buy a vehicle, you are going to go through a title and registration process. Simple. You're going to see an annual registration renewal. In the marine side, it is similar until we get into a certain size of a boat. When we get into the 28-foot class, is a roundabout expectation, is about the 28-foot range and larger. Um, it changes because if you are financing, getting back to that finance topic for a moment, if lenders are involved, they're going to demand that a boat be Coast Guard documented as opposed to state registration. And here's why. Coast Guard documentation is basically I'll call it to simplify the description, I'll call it a federal registration of sorts. But ultimately, instead of registering and titling your boat in a state database, um, Coast Guard documentation now basically takes all that information about your boat and is documented into a federal database. So the reason that the lenders want to see a larger boat, again in that 28-foot range and larger range, the reason they want to see that Coast Guard documented is because if that boat were to end up being stolen, or it is landed itself in another state beyond the state boundaries, it is easier with all the information that is documented federally. It's easier for the lender to reclaim that collateral and locate that vessel. If you are a cash buyer, you're buying your boat, you have complete control and autonomy to do what you want there. You can state register and title. You can Coast Guard document the vessel, whatever you wish there. The rules will change a little bit when you're lending, but there's a reason for that. The other reason, if you are traveling to other foreign destinations, foreign ports, where in any area where you might have to pass through customs, a Coast Guard documented vessel, based on the information that is federally documented, it's a little simpler. It's a little less intrusive of a process to pass through customs and reach your foreign port. So, just another topic there, and but there's choices.
Sounds good. And another parallel that we find in both our industries, you and I have talked about this before, is the market in general, the real estate market and the boating market, how they kind of are parallel. And rather than us getting, or at least from my standpoint, getting into the market, the statistics, days on market, all those types of things, at the end of this program, there's going to be my contact information. They can gladly email me. We'll send them all the statistics. Our newsletters always have all the statistics out for Collier and Lee County. But I think that we got to dive a little deeper into this, Chris, because, you know, you're going to, they need to talk to you too about the type of boat they're going to have, because the type of boat they're going to have is going to have a lot to do with where they want to buy waterfront property or where they have the waterfront property, things that we've talked about in other podcasts, bridge heights, bridge clearance, water depth underneath, all those things. Plus, are they going to make the memories fishing, cruising, sunset? You know, I would say that even in this current market, if there's buyers and sellers out there, whether it's new or used, that if you're priced for the market, it's value, we're selling and we're in doing business.
We've for all of my years of being in this business, and I think you and I've talked about this before, and maybe even have commented on a previous podcast, but um, the recreational markets, boating, RV, anything that keeps us outside enjoying ourselves, and then the home development, construction, real estate, all of that stuff. I've always found those to operate at a basically the same sliding scale. The ups and downs affect both industries. When people are happy with income, with investments, with their property value, with all the above, it leaks over into the recreational sides as well. So it's been we're very fortunate that the bulk of our years in this business have been good. There's going to be adjustments, and there has to be. If there's not an adjustment, then you can't go up forever. So the beauty of that is when things are operating at the state that they have been, I think we're going back on a positive trend. Thankfully, the last year's been obviously maybe a little softer than it was maybe in the past, but we're all thankful that we're back on that positive trend. People down here, I've said this a lot over the years. I don't think that anybody will ever in our area completely give away their boating habit. It's just not going to happen. There are a lot of financially savvy people in our area, and I really pay that as a big compliment to all of you. Those that have made wise financial decisions. You're not just throwing it away on an unnecessary purchase of a home, an unnecessary purchase of a boat. So it's people are still smart about their spending. So when things are a little softer than maybe they have been historically, then they're going to adjust that spending, but they're not going to give up on it. Just like they're not going to. And I'm a huge advocate of this on the real estate side. I mean, I really have a tough time not buying the home that I want because it's where you're going to spend a long time, not just every day, but potentially for most the rest of your life. So the decision making between both industries, I think, is pretty similar.
Absolutely. And again, we both work, live, and play in Southwest Florida. And I think we both, it's our opinions, obviously, not as professionals in either of our professions, that we are blessed to live in a great area that we feel is going to be here for a long time to come. And, and, and you can see that by the number of successful people that live, in this area, so thank you guys all for being successful and bringing value to Southwest Florida because we do love it. And now for the final question, Chris. I mean, maybe we can call it which came first, the chicken or the egg.
Yeah.
But do you buy your boat first, or you buy your house first, or you know, sometimes you've already made that decision, but what do you think?
Uh, I love you, buddy, but there's no right answer to that
I
question.
know that.
But I'm going to give you my best response. Um, there's a lot of different pieces. What I say it all the time to everybody. There's so many pieces of the puzzle today that have to come together for either of these purchases to make sense. So what's the focal point? What's the commitment made first? I have a lot of clients that maybe they're in the process of a home build or in the process of the purchase, and we're not closing for 30, 60 days out. Maybe the lift at the residence is not going to be ready immediately after closing, and then there's a dock vendor involved. Side note, a lot of resources, whether it be for the home or the boat. Um, Mike and I think we both take a lot of pride in being more of just as much of a resource of information about this stuff as we're selling you. So please use both of us for that information. But back to that answer is the pieces don't always fall into place in the proper order. So I might have at times an opportunity for someone that where absolutely everything makes sense. The 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 pricing of the opportunity, everything about the design, everything about what we were the boxes that we're checking off throughout that process, all come together as they should. But Chris, I don't have a home for the boat, or I'm not going to be in a position to take possession for another 30, 60, 90 days. Well, that's a dealer by dealer kind of response, because ultimately at Naples Boat Mart, we're fortunate to offer a lot of speaking of resources, a lot of things like seasonal storage of your vessel. So if somebody says, Chris, I'm just not in a position to take possession of the boat, but we want to proceed, then that's an easy one. We have the luxury of having the space and the property to house the boat for an agreed amount of time, and in reality, no cost to you. So, if someone does have their home, and that's a simple answer. Then you've made your home purchase, everything is settled in, and you go out and pick out your boat. Um, I wish there was a scientific or better answer to that question. But I think the only person that's going to know the real answer is you, the buyer. What is I think it all makes sense that the priority should always be the home first. From a boat salesman, there's a sales pitch for you. Don't buy your boat always first. unless it's just an absolute, it's the right opportunity. But keeping the, I've had situations, especially with a few of my European clients that made purchases of boats and purchase of homes, but not necessarily in that order, and then hit surprisingly some unfortunate scenarios after the purchase that just delayed it to a time far more than they were expecting. So between your relationship with your realtor, your builder, whoever it might be, if there's some accuracy that you're comfortable in, then absolutely dive in. If you're done with the actual purchase and maybe it's just not done yet, and you know that there's going to be an interest in being on the water, then jump on it.
Well, I think the other thing is that would another thing that we yin yang well off of that we can do for our viewers and our potential clients is we can educate them this way. If they've talked to their financial advisor, they've talked to the family, they made decisions they want to be in Southwest Florida, they've talked to their lender, whichever way they want to do it. We specialize in giving waterfront property tours. And, if they're trying to match that with their boat, we've talked about this in other podcasts. We can put them on the boat and we can show them how easy it is to navigate the open water. Or if they've come to you and they like the boat, we can, coordinate a waterfront property tour with the boat that they think they want, and we can go make sure it all fits and matches up. So that's an extra win-win that we can provide to you, the viewer, the buyer, and help you out. That might not be available through other resources.
I think your industry and my industry have taken another common approach to a lot of things over the last, let's say, several years, is making the process a lot easier, a lot more fluid, a lot more enjoyable than maybe it used to be. The thought, I'll be very honest, and it was, I've had a number of homes here in Southwest Florida over the years, and they have not always been the most enjoyable to go through to get there. I know Mike and his staff and his personality and his approach line up very well to mine. And the thought there is, from the first handshake to the time where we set you free with your new boat or your new home, I, as well as Mike, really go after creating these relationships. So 20 years later, we're sitting here doing a podcast together. So getting to know my clients, creating those relationships, and ultimately being a resource for them throughout the process. So they don't ever have to worry about if they have, just like your home buyers, if there's ever a scenario where they maybe have some issues going on and they don't know who to go to, the first person is likely going to be Mike, and my clients is going to be me, and not necessarily calling the dealership quickly to find out what the next step is. It's being that resource for people. So it's trying to make it fun, trying to make it enjoyable, not trying to make it work. Because quite honestly, here's a sales pitch for you. If it becomes more so on my side, the recreational side, if you're buying a boat and it's too much work, or it ends up being down the road, just it doesn't reward you as much as it should or you thought it would be. There's other things to do. We are likely in an area where it has per capita more golf communities than any place on the globe. There's a lot of things to do on top of just having the beautiful weather to enjoy. So we try to make it fun.
Well, Chris, I think we've touched on these topics today. We hope you got something out of this educational part of our podcast. So this is Captain Mike and Chris. Have a wonderful day. And one more time, we'd like to thank our sponsor, Lewis Ferris from Hoot Home Loans. We're out.
Thank you.
Like, follow, and subscribe.